What's an oh crap moment when you realize you've been doing something the wrong way for years? I lived in a house for 6 years with a bathroom with no shelf or cupboard to put toiletries into. I was very disappointed and ended up using a windowsill that was way too small to fit everything. Anyway, one day we had a friend over and he asked why we didn't have anything in our bathroom cupboard. I was confused, so he showed me. It turns out that the mirror had been using for 6 years as a hidden compartment behind it. It was a mirrored door to a mounted cupboard on the wall. I was astonished and immediately moved all my stuff from the window into the new space. My friend was baffled that I had never figured out there was a space behind the mirror. There was an obvious gap between it and the wall that I somehow failed to notice. Another one was that my family always had a cup next to the bathroom sink in case you needed to rinse your mouth after brushing your teeth or maybe get a quick drink of water in the middle of the night. My grandma had the same cup at her house. I used it for years whenever I was thirsty. One day she saw me doing this and said, "Don't use that cup. That's where Grandma puts her teeth." It's called a medicine cabinet. I'll let you pause here to check the bathroom if you have one too. Story 2. I grew up without a mom. She passed away when I was 6. I was afraid to ask my dad how to put a tampon in. One day I commented about age 18 to some friends that tampons hang too far out and make me feel like a waddle when I walk. My friend asked me how I put them in. I thought I would get stuck up there and wasn't inserting it far enough. I did it wrong for about 5 years. My friends still make fun of me for it. I can't help but use the dead mom card, but looking back, it's pretty common sense that I have to shove it up there. In addition, I didn't really feel comfortable with my body, so I'm not sure I understood what the directions were asking. Plus, my dad was a really good dad. Obviously, he made some general mistakes as a parent, as all parents do, but as a substitute mother, he did a great job. He taught me how to shave my legs, funny voices and all, and he was a Girl Scout troop leader for almost 10 years. He tried to figure out how to French braid, and he combed my nasty, ratty hair on a daily basis. Story 3. I was living in a foreign country where I was actively learning the language. Social cues go a long way when learning a language on the spot. That being said, someone once said a phrase to me while serving a hot dish, which I assumed meant excuse me. After going through crowds and lines replicating the same phrase in an attempt to be respectful of those around me, I abruptly found out that the phrase actually meant enjoy. Hindsight completely makes sense. The odd looks I would get by saying enjoy while squeezing past people all of a sudden made sense. For context, this happened while I was living in Vietnam. The phrase was xin moi. It was even more deceiving because it was similar to the phrase for sorry, which is xin loi. That was year 1. The following 3 years were full of similar mistakes. Tonal languages are tough. Story 4. My wife and I have the ceiling fan in our bedroom in the house we moved into 2 years ago. It has a remote control for the fan and lights. About a year and a half ago, the lights suddenly stopped working. The fan works well, and we didn't have a ton of money, so we just lived with lamps in the room. Always frustrated with how damn dark it is. I was scrolling and saw a post of a guy talking about how his lights stopped working years ago. Then he found out that they were just dimmed, which you do by holding down the button on the remote. It sounded so much like our fan that I went and tried it. And yes, it was dimmed. On the bright side, ironically, mood lighting and lower electricity bills makes the relationship healthier, don't you think? Story 5. So I was fortunate enough to buy my own home due to unfortunate circumstances. I moved in and the thermostat thing was set to about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. As time went on, I couldn't figure out why there was no visible way for me to change the temperature. My electric bill would be through the roof every month. The thermostat is well above my eye level and I lived alone for quite some time, though family and friends did visit regularly. After several months of leaving windows open or closed to adapt to the change in weather, I finally asked my niece, I think, to check the thermostat for a way to change the temperature. She looked around for a bit and saw that there was a tab I was supposed to pull to reveal all the buttons and settings of the darn thermostat. Oh, crap. Story 6. I was incredibly sheltered growing up. Anything intimate was taboo and not discussed. I was in middle school when instant messaging really became mainstream. I couldn't understand why the boy I had a crush on kept laughing at me and telling me not to use the shorthand for cum. I didn't find out for a few years. Telling someone what to do and what to not do should always come with an explanation. But hey, at least her crush won't be able to forget her. Story 7. Back in the early 2010s, my boyfriend and I had a PlayStation that we used for Netflix since we didn't have a smart TV. The controller was on such a short cord that we would always have to get up from the couch to change the program or push any buttons. My boyfriend also used to have to sit up on the floor up close to the TV to play his video games since the cord was so short. One day my brother came to visit. We put something on Netflix and got up to use the remote like we always did. My brother proceeded to unplug the controller, handed it to us, and said, "You realize this is a wireless controller, right?" We are dumbfounded. Why would there be a cord coming from it? It turns out that's just a charger wireless controller. Needless to say, we were mind blown. Story 8. I have a flashlight that I've had for nearly a decade. I originally got it because it looked like a lightsaber and was cheap. Plus, you could twist the lens around it to focus it, or so I thought. When I got it home and put batteries in it, I found that twisting the top didn't change the focus. I assumed the top being able to twist was just a result of it being cheap. Fast forward to a month or so ago. The storm picked up during the night, so I went out to check to see if anything was going to blow away. As I was trying to open the gate, the flashlight slipped, and it caught about the top part that twists, but the rest of the flashlight slid about 2 inches down from the twisty part. And it turns out if you pull the top part up, it turns into a lantern-type thing for lighting up an area. It's nothing big, but there have been times when it would have been incredibly useful to be able to put the torch down and light up a wide area. I'm not even mad about that lantern-type feature. Considering it's cheap, the fact that it's been useful for nearly a decade means it's more than an awesome buy. Story 9. After moving to a new city, I went to the laundromat and the Korean lady working was yelling at me about something I couldn't understand. After some pantomime, it became clear that she was upset that I was putting in the wrong detergent, but it was the same kind I had been using for 8 years, since moving away to college and being behind. It turns out I've been washing my clothes with only fabric softener for nearly a decade. They always smelled good, so I never really thought about it. Not my proudest moment. Story 10. I owned a light blue colored microwave for about 3 years that a family member gave me as a housewarming gift. I thought it was cool. I'd never seen a blue microwave before. One night a buddy asked why I never took the blue plastic wrap off my microwave and proceeded to peel it off for me. Damn, that thing is silver. I still miss my blue microwave sometimes though. Oh man, I'd grieve for a blue microwave too. This buddy should never be allowed near any cool appliances again. Story 11. A couple of years ago I was trying to open some toothpaste and had to break the seal of the tube. I used to look for something like a nail to break it. Then one day I looked at the pointy end of the cap and thought, what if I could use this to break it? And oh crap, it did fit and break it effortlessly. And so did every other tube product I had in the house in their respective caps. My mind was blown. Oh, and for years I would struggle to take the cap off new deodorants, the ones under the lid. It is always so stuck down in the deodorant stick. I had an aha moment a year or so ago when I could simply crank the deodorant stick up until the cap could easily be removed. I'm 34. It took me until I was 34 to realize this. Story 12. Since the dawn of time, I would pick up the silverware and utensils out of their tray in the dishwasher and put them away in their drawers, and go back and pick up more out of the dishwasher. Then one day, I saw my wife lift the tray out of the dishwasher and I legit stood there with my mouth open. Story 13. Okay, I realized this literally yesterday. It's super embarrassing for me to admit this because it's common knowledge for pretty much everyone who speaks English, but for my entire life, I was under the impression that the word approximately meant exact or precise. Yesterday, I was watching a documentary about a guy who fell off his boat, and the guy that found it said they found it approximately 300 yards away. And I'm like, okay, how would they know exactly how far that was without measuring? So I did end up looking up the definition, and imagine my embarrassment when I found out it meant rough estimate. I'm 28. Story 14. When I was a kid and was acting up, my dad would always threaten to leave me at this mean old lady's house. Her name was Helen Handbasket. Fast forward about 28 years later, and it clicked out of nowhere while I was on a customer call at work. Customer. This whole network is going to hell in a handbasket. Me. Ha, I'm an idiot. Customer. Did you figure it out? Me. Oh, no, not yet. Parents are always full of fun stuff like that. Remember to use it on your kid to get satisfaction. Story 15. I'm lactose intolerant. I genuinely did not know this for the first 25 plus years of my life. I always had to go to the bathroom after eating something with cheese in it. One day it just clicked. I bought some Lactaid, took it before the next time I ate cheese, and I didn't have to go to the bathroom. It was mind-blowing. I have no idea how I didn't make the connection for years. So I guess you could say instead of having an oh crap moment, I had a no crap moment. Story 16. No one really ever told me you don't need to buy shoes with a 2-finger space in front of the toes after your feet stop growing. I had been buying an entire size too big until about age 23. 23. One day in college, I decided to try a pair of Merrell barefoot-type shoes, and after reading the sizing guide, bam, mind blown. It's a terribly obvious mistake. I, 29 female, like to blame on being an only child, but I'm just an idiot. Well, to be fair, some people's feet grow until their 20s. Story 17. Well, it was just fairly recent when I realized that you do, in fact, need to disassemble your laundry dryer and clean the lint out from underneath the drum once per year. I'm 31 and never knew this. No one ever said anything, and I never saw anyone do this. The crappiest thing is that my parents also learned this the hard way and never bothered to give me a tip when I bought my first dryer. Luckily, my wife and I discovered the lint buildup when changing the rollers. I said to my parents, wow, it really builds up there. And they were like, oh yeah, you need to do that like once a year. Experience really is the best teacher with these kinds of oh crap scenarios, huh? And if you've been having fun so far, never miss a story by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Story 18. Well, to start, I'm a male who grew up with my grandma and mom, so growing up I had very few male influences, and I'm 34 now, so the internet sucked. Anyway, when I was 12, my mom decided to move us in with her boyfriend. The first night in our new place, I walked out of the shower with my towel on. My stepdad said, "What are you doing? You're not a girl." I looked confused and said, "I know. Why?" He then said, "Guys don't wear their towels like that." I then realized I had always worn my towel up to my chest since that's all I saw growing up. I did not realize it was so they would cover their chests. I was so embarrassed. So yeah, long story short, I wore my towel like a female until I was 12. Story 19. So I'd always assumed that gas stations had pipes that led to a nearby oil plant or something. I live in Houston, so during Hurricane Harvey in 2017, there was so much news about the gas stations being empty because they weren't being filled. I was in the car with my sisters and we were talking about it, and I mentioned that I didn't understand how the gas supply was limited when the pipes were underground and not affected by the flooding. They both looked at me with the most confused faces ever, and one of them said, "You do know that trucks come to fill up gas stations, right?" I was completely shocked by this and had no idea, and they asked me, "So when you see the big trucks at little gas stations in the city with tubes in the ground, what do you think they were doing?" And I replied, filling up their gas? Not something I did wrong, but definitely something I thought wrong for 17 years. Story 20. As a kid, I never knew that saving in video games was a thing. Whenever I looked at the menu screen, I just didn't think much of it and just ignored it. After a few years, maybe when I was about 11 years old, I started watching gaming videos on YouTube and saw that you could save your progress. Little old me was absolutely mind-blown that Pokemon wasn't supposed to be played in less than a day and that I could actually save my progress. Playing an entire game in less than a day is more fun and a far more impressive feat. The little old you should be proud. Story 21. My significant other and I were in a fight and he said, "You're unbelievably selfish and impossible to talk to." Somehow my defense mechanisms were not engaged at the moment because I heard him and realized it was true. I saw for the first time that I had been mostly difficult all my life. That is, super defensive and wrong about a lot of things, aka a narcissist. I have since had to learn how to be kind, to listen, and to give back, and while it has been very hard, I still cringe often when I think back on many moments in my life. I now know I was wrong, and my life is so much better. This is a much more wholesome realization. It's really weird to find out that the way you perceive yourself is so different from what you're actually doing, but in a good way. Story 22. My mom refused to show me how to use a tampon because she thought I should stick to pads. After all, they were safer. This was back when Googling how to do things wasn't an option, and I was the first in my friend group to get my period and a little sheepish about it. So basically, I was shoving that sucker up there with the entire applicator for like 2 years, wondering why tampons didn't seem to work that well for me. It wasn't until I was in high school and one of my friends went on a crusade against plastic waste and started advocating for tampons with no applicators that all of a sudden I realized I had massively made a mistake. Story 23. My mom never tried to teach me how to wipe my bum. She just decided at some point to start ignoring me when I called her when I was finished. I had never seen anyone else wipe theirs before. So for years, I wiped my own by bending over all the way with my head near my feet. You know, the thing you do when someone else wipes your bum for you. Eventually, I saw someone on TV doing it while just sitting down normally. Game changer. It's literally an oh shit moment when you realize you can do it in more ways than one. It's just a matter of preference, really. I mean, some people don't even do it at all. Story 24. When I was about 16, when I learned that there's paper around Reese's peanut butter cup. Growing up, my family only bought those small ones that you can eat in one bite, so I never had a chance to bite into a regular one and actually see the paper. So one day, me and my sister were talking about what candy we wanted to hand out on Halloween, and I mentioned that peanut butter cups were good apart from having a chewy piece in them, which really confused her. And we spent the next few minutes arguing over if they were chewy or not. Then she stopped talking in the middle of her sentence, and I could see that something had clicked for her. She went to the kitchen and grabbed one, told me to eat it, and started laughing hard when I put the entire chocolate, still wrapped in the little brown paper, into my mouth. It's still, to this day, my greatest shame that I can't live down. Then, some years ago, everyone started to hype edamame, so I gave it a try. I love beans and peas in general, so I wondered why they taste so disgusting. And for a few embarrassing weeks, I ate whole edamame when someone ordered them to share it in a restaurant. Because that's what cool kids eat these days, right? Guess what? By observing others, I found out that you're not supposed to eat the skin. Since then, I have loved edamame. I'm still wondering if anyone noticed I was doing it wrong. Story 25. I took my then-girlfriend to a fancy Baja bucket joint in San Diego, and we each ordered a variety of buckets full of shrimp, lobster, carne asada, chicken, etc. Trying to be suave and playful, I went to feed her a single shrimp tail from my bucket. She giggled and I put the shrimp in her mouth, but held the tail, because nobody eats that. And she bit down and I pulled the tail away, and she chewed, then stopped, and chewed once more and stopped, and she stared at me with a "what did you do" look in her face. This is when I learned about peeling shrimp. Not everybody does, but some people eat the shell and tail. It's an acquired taste, though. But what's more interesting is using fancy and bucket in the same sentence. Story 26. Opening milk bottles. They all have that flap of plastic that you can grip to peel the cover off. I've ignored that for however long they've been doing it. It took my mom coming over to visit from overseas, watching me open a new bottle, and asking me why I was not using the flap for a grip. I asked what she meant and she showed me. I felt like I was 5 and learning how to subtract triple-digit numbers all over again. Also Kraft mac and cheese. Up until a few months ago, I would drain the noodles, add them back to the pot, and then add the milk, butter, and cheese packet. It took forever to get all the clumps out. Then I realized it would be way easier to just add the milk, butter, and cheese to the already hot pan and make a cheese sauce while the noodles are draining. No more clumps. Story 27. My whole life it turned out that I was saying TH, which sounds like F. Example, trying to say 3, but it sounds like free. The first time I noticed it when I was at my cousin's house and she asked me to say 3, then free, and laughed. I was so confused. Once I got to middle school, one of my friends made fun of me for it too, and he finally explained what it was. When I recorded myself saying 3 and free, I noticed the difference and felt so dumb. The good part is that after forcing myself enough for about 2 years, I have the difference between saying TH and F sounds wired into my brain. And sometimes I assume I know the lyrics to songs I've heard on the radio for a long time. I always sang Toto's Africa as I miss the rains down in Africa, until someone made fun of me and told me it was I bless the rains down in Africa. They argued, that makes no sense. Why would someone bless rain? It's a song about longing to return to Africa, which is why they miss the rain. Then I went home and looked up the lyrics. If you've been enjoying these stupidly awkward moments, then level up by checking out what's your "this person is on another level of stupid" story. Story 2 is straight up out of a comedy movie. See you there.